Let's rewind to 2018, a year that would become infamous in the world of international trade and economics. The headlines were ablaze, news anchors were buzzing, and the world was about to witness a dramatic shift in global commerce. It all started when the US president decided that global trade needed a serious jolt. He believed that America was getting the short end of the stick, and something drastic had to be done to shake things up. His solution? Impose a hefty 25% tariff on imported steel and a 10% tariff on imported aluminum. These weren't just numbers, they were a bold statement to the world that the US was ready to play hardball. The pitch to the American people was simple: protect American jobs from what was called unfair foreign competition, and breathe new life into the struggling US steel industry. The hope was to see factories humming, workers clocking in, and a new era of American manufacturing dominance. The idea seemed straightforward: make foreign steel more expensive, and everyone would naturally turn to American-made products. It was a classic case of economic nationalism, wrapped in the flag and sold as a win for the working class. But the global economy isn't a 1950s newsreel. It's a vast, intricate web of supply chains, partnerships, and dependencies. In today's world, countries rely on each other for raw materials, parts, and finished goods. A single change can send shockwaves across continents. The tariffs were justified as a national security measure, even though the majority of imported steel actually came from close allies like Canada, not adversaries. The logic was shaky, and the move raised eyebrows everywhere. The notion that Canadian steel posed a threat to US national security? To many, it sounded downright absurd. After all, Canada had been a reliable partner for decades. The announcement sent shockwaves through America's closest allies, left manufacturers scrambling for answers, and had economists scratching their heads in disbelief. The uncertainty was palpable. The administration seemed confident that other countries would simply accept the new rules and move on. But international trade doesn't work that way. There are always consequences. Trade wars are never one-sided. Other countries quickly retaliated with tariffs of their own, targeting American goods and industries in a tit-for-tat escalation. Suddenly, everyone was caught in the crossfire. Manufacturers faced higher costs, supply chains were disrupted, and border delays became the new normal. What started as a bold move quickly spiraled into chaos. Instead of sparking a manufacturing renaissance, the US found itself at the epicenter of a global trade storm. Factories slowed down, workers worried about their jobs, and uncertainty loomed large. The world pushed back hard, and the consequences were immediate and far-reaching. International relationships were strained, and global markets reacted with volatility. The Great Tariff Tantrum had officially begun, and its fallout would ripple through economies, industries, and communities everywhere, leaving a lasting mark on the world stage. Let's break down tariffs in the simplest way possible. You might have heard the word tariff tossed around in the news, especially when countries are arguing about trade. But what exactly is a tariff? And why does it matter to you? A tariff is basically just a tax that governments put on goods coming in from other countries, imported goods. It's not some mysterious fee, it's a straightforward tax, but it can have big effects. For example, let's say your favorite chocolate bar from overseas costs $1. If the government adds a 25% tariff, that chocolate bar now costs $1.25. That extra 25 cents doesn't go to the chocolate company, it goes straight to the government. The government collects this extra money every time someone imports that chocolate bar or any other taxed product. The main idea behind tariffs is to make imported goods more expensive, so shoppers are more likely to buy products made in their own country. It's a way to encourage people to support domestic businesses. But here's something most people don't realize. American importers, not foreign companies or governments, are the ones who actually pay the tariff when goods enter the country. And since businesses don't want to lose money, they almost always pass that extra cost on to you, the shopper. So when you buy that chocolate bar, you're the one paying more. In reality, tariffs are a tax on Americans who buy imported goods. It's not just about chocolate. Think about electronics, clothes, or even cars. For example, when the US put tariffs on imported steel, it was American companies that had to pay more for steel, and those costs trickled down to consumers. That meant higher prices for things like cars, appliances, and even beer kegs, products that use a lot of steel. There's a common myth that tariffs make foreign countries pay, but that's just not true. The cost lands right here at home. Tariffs are a blunt tool, and the financial pain is felt by American families and businesses, not by foreign governments. So while tariffs are often wrapped in patriotic language, the real economic hit is felt by Americans at the checkout counter in their businesses and in their everyday lives. The steel tariffs briefly boosted a few U.S. steel companies, stock prices rose, mills reopened, and politicians celebrated. But the reality? The gains were short-lived. For every steelworker helped, dozens in industries that use steel, like automakers and appliance makers, were hurt. Ford and GM lost billions, cutting jobs and investment. American manufacturers paid more for steel than foreign competitors, even at home. The tariffs backfired, making U.S. products less competitive. A few thousand steel jobs were gained, but tens of thousands were lost elsewhere. The policy protected a tiny slice of the economy while damaging the rest. It was a classic case of winning a battle but losing the war. The broader American industry ended up weaker, not stronger. The trade war didn't just hit steel, it spilled into unexpected places, like American whiskey. When the U.S. imposed tariffs, the EU retaliated with a 25% tariff on bourbon and whiskey. This was a targeted move, hitting Kentucky, home of bourbon and a key political state. Overnight, American whiskey became much pricier in Europe. Sales plummeted, exports dropped by over 30%, and small distillers were hit hardest. Years of building international markets vanished. The bourbon industry became collateral damage in a fight it never started. Trade wars create innocent victims, businesses caught in the crossfire. The idea that tariffs could be contained was a fantasy. Once the cannons fired, the damage spread everywhere. Even iconic American products weren't safe. The whiskey story showed just how far the fallout could reach. Canada, our friendly neighbor, was stunned to be labeled a security threat. Prime Minister Trudeau called the tariffs insulting and unacceptable. But Canada didn't just complain, they hit back with dollar-for-dollar retaliation. Their list targeted American products for maximum political impact. Items like ketchup, lawnmowers, coffee, and whiskey were chosen to hit U.S. industries and voters. Every Canadian who saw pricier American ketchup was reminded of the dispute. Canada's response was strategic, not random. It showed even America's closest allies wouldn't be pushed around. The illusion of U.S. impunity was shattered. By targeting key political districts, Canada made sure Congress felt the pain. It was a polite but powerful checkmate. The trade war's dynamics changed overnight. Even the mildest allies fought back when pushed. Canada's retaliation list was a masterstroke. Ketchup was the star. When the tariffs hit, it wasn't just about economics, it was about national pride, and ketchup became the unlikely symbol of resistance. Heinz, with roots in Pennsylvania, was targeted, but Canadians rallied behind French's, made with local tomatoes. Social media campaigns urged shoppers to buy Canadian, and French's sales soared as people swapped out their usual brands for homegrown alternatives. Grocery aisles became a trade war battleground. Shoppers debated brands, checked labels, and made choices that felt like acts of patriotism. Suddenly, every bottle on the shelf was a statement. The same logic applied to whiskey, orange juice, and more. Tariffs nudged Canadians to buy local or from other countries. Products that once seemed ordinary now carried political weight, and shopping lists changed overnight. U.S. border towns lost Canadian shoppers as tariffs made American goods pricier. Once busy malls and outlets near the border saw a dramatic drop in visitors, and parking lots sat empty where crowds once gathered. Small businesses suffered as cross-border shopping dried up. Owners worried about their future, and some stores closed their doors for good, unable to weather the sudden loss of customers. American boat and maple syrup producers lost Canadian customers overnight. Factories slowed production and shelves filled with unsold goods, as loyal Canadian buyers looked elsewhere. The web of trade is tightly woven. Pull one thread and chaos follows. Shipping routes were disrupted, and companies scrambled to find new suppliers and markets, creating confusion at every level. Retaliation hit unexpected places, from lawnmowers to maple syrup. Even products that seemed unrelated to the dispute found themselves caught in the crossfire, with workers and businesses feeling the pinch. The ripple effects were real and often absurd. Prices jumped, shelves emptied, and shoppers found themselves searching for alternatives to everyday items they once took for granted. Trade wars don't just hurt big corporations, they hit small towns and everyday people. Families felt the impact in their wallets. and communities struggled to adapt to the new reality. Every product on the list told a story of unintended consequences. Behind each tariff was a chain reaction, affecting jobs, prices, and the choices people made every day. The ketchup war was just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface, a complex web of relationships and livelihoods was shaken, reminding us how deeply connected our economies truly are. Ironically, the steel tariffs helped foreign competitors more than American companies. U.S. manufacturers paid more for steel, while foreign rivals bought it cheap and sold products back to the U.S. American-made goods became pricier than imports, even at home. Some U.S. companies moved operations abroad just to survive. The government's exemption process was a bureaucratic nightmare, favoring big firms over small ones. Businesses faced uncertainty, delays, and higher costs. The policy failed to revive manufacturing and instead sparked chaos. Downstream industries from nails to car parts suffered. Retaliatory tariffs hit unrelated sectors like agriculture and spirits. The simple-sounding solution unraveled into a complex disaster. It was economic surgery with a sledgehammer. The tariffs damaged more than just the economy. They hurt America's global relationships. The U.S. had long championed free trade, but the tariffs signaled a retreat from that role. Trust with allies, especially Canada, was eroded. Decades of partnership were strained by accusations and retaliation. Rebuilding trust isn't as easy as lifting tariffs. The scars linger. The trade war created instability, making businesses hesitant to invest. Unpredictable policy shifts chilled economic growth. The episode proved no country is immune from the fallout of a trade war. Retaliation showed that economic power is now widely distributed. Trade isn't a zero-sum game. Everyone can lose. The lesson: trade wars leave all sides worse off. The damage to trust and predictability may last for years. By 2025, many tariffs were lifted and tensions eased, but the scars remain. American whiskey is recovering in Europe, but lost ground is hard to regain. The idea that tariffs protect industry still lingers in politics. The threat of future trade wars hasn't disappeared. The precedent is set. Protectionism is hard to unlearn. Businesses are now diversifying supply chains, spreading risk across countries. This friend-shoring is a slow, costly shift, but it's a direct result of the chaos. The story of tariffs and retaliation is a cautionary tale. Trade is about trust and relationships, not just numbers. The trade war left economic damage, strained alliances, and a hangover of uncertainty. Nothing to celebrate.